God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows.
Welcome to the 7th episode of Your Journey Is Not Over. My name is Tanya Pearson Randolph. This is my own personal journey. The expressions and opinions are of my own. I own all the rights to my personal journey, and to Your Journey Is Not Over. Neither is to be used, copied, edited in any way without my consent. Before I get started today, I do want to say I've spent the past couple hours crying and praying for God to give me strength and grace to get through this podcast today. The fact that our childhood trauma played a major role in my brother's suicide is still something I have to cope with every single day. My only wish is that I could have been there to help him deal with it and heal it, because I probably was the only person that could. I know our bond was unbreakable, even though we were estranged. Enduring the childhood trauma together tore us apart, because when we did see each other, we were each other's reminders of the hell that we had to endure and go through together. We moved to another county, another new school. Fourth school in a year and a half. Again, the new girl, quiet and to myself, feeling completely abandoned at this time, because my brother was made to move in with family in another city. So for the first time in my entire life, I was having to live without him looking out for me and feeding me and, of course, protecting me. I still remember that day that we took him to drop him off. Of course, before we left to take him, he had a long talk with me. I was crying and begging him, please don't leave me. He had no choice. He was being made to go. But he told me to just be good and stay to myself and stay out of our mother's way, not to trigger her. And if I needed him, I could always call him. That would become a heartbreaking challenge that you will soon hear about. So again, at a new school, I was still very quiet and to myself, but I got embraced completely, and I was again blessed with the best of friends that would become lifelong friends, especially since we are connected on social media now. I also got blessed with the most amazing teacher. She was so kind and loving and nurturing with me. Now I look back and I somehow think she knew I was suffering in silence. It was also during this time that, with my brother not there to take care of me, I was being left alone a lot. And on weekends, I would go to my grandma's house, which was amazing and full of so many memories that we would make and that would have to last me a lifetime. We had a schedule, so on Friday nights, we would fix some popcorn and watch the TV show Dallas. And that was our favorite show. I have to say that in 2007, I lived in Grand Prairie, Texas, and my husband at the time and I went to South Fork, the ranch on the show. It was such a dream come true that this little girl from a small town, and that I grew up watching this show, and here I was. I felt like I was accomplishing something for she and I. I was so excited that I had him stop right underneath the South Fork sign so I could get out of the car and do a dance. I loved staying with her. It was home to me. We talked a lot, cooked, cleaned, danced and sang, went to church. My brother lived across the street from my grandma's. Yes, you would think that would be great, right? That I would get to see him and spend time with him, right? Well, think again. Immediately after my brother was made to move in with these family members, the strangest things started happening. My brother would have to sneak over and see me without getting caught. Oh, wait, it gets stranger. During this time, I would be made to stay with the same family members that my brother lived with. And when I would stay, my brother was made to keep his distance from me and almost act like he didn't even know me. We could read each other's eyes, and he knew it would hurt me that we had to act like this around each other. Never forget, my brother was one of two people that I would openly talk to, my grandma being the other. Many times he would find me and quietly and quickly kiss me on the forehead and tell me he loved me, and just be good and do whatever these family members told me to do. I would always start crying and tell him, I don't understand. Mind you, every single adult involved were very close to their siblings, so it's still very mind-boggling to me. He would tell me, always remember, I love you. One time I was staying there, and it was in the dead of winter, and they only turned the heat on in their bedrooms. So I was freezing, and I was sleeping on a leather couch in their living room with a little blanket. In the middle of the night, my brother came to check on me, and I was freezing. So he got another blanket, and we laid on the floor and snuggled up. I even remember him breathing under the blanket so he could warm me up faster. Before I tell the rest of this memory, I want to first remind everyone that my brother was my only constant my entire life. The person who became pretty much my father figure, my lifeline, my protector, my provider, and my caretaker, and was taught to do all of this since the day he met me when I was 2 weeks old. I'm sure it was second nature to him to protect me and make sure I was warm. We had done this 100 times in the back of our mother's car just to keep warm while our mother was in the bars partying. And don't forget that the one bedroom apartment that we all lived in, my brother and I slept on the floor on a pallet in the living room together. So, yes, it was embedded in him to take care of me. So, back to this memory. We ended up falling asleep after he got me warm. The next morning was horrible. We got woke up to the female family member screaming at my brother and accusing my brother of sinister stuff. And then she started beating on him. I remember all I could do was cry. My brother went through pure hell for just protecting me and making sure I was warm. I could not believe it. I still can't. Literally looking back on it now, it's like they were trying to deprogram or brainwash my brother into not loving me. This continued even after we were adults, always trying to put a wedge in between us. Hopefully, the one family member that's still alive from that family listens to my podcast because I definitely want him to know one thing: my brother loved me, and nothing you people ever did or said could change that. There's a lot more I'm going to tell, not for revenge, but because of the things that they did, it added to my trauma. Also, the same family members had an enduring nickname for me. It was Orphan Annie. My brother and I were the only ones in our family that didn't have our dads. We were poor. We had to wear hand me downs. We didn't have all the nice stuff and name brand clothes. My winter coat was bought for me by my brother after he had to shovel snow all day long to buy it for me. That was before he was made to leave me and move it in with them. So, of course, we had to move accordingly around the rest of the family. And every family member always made sure we knew we were poor and pitiful and pretty much charity cases. Again, only my family. No wonder my brother and I, as adults, ended up both being givers and very prideful, and we both worked hard to have nice things. During this time, I remember there were times my mother would get mad at my grandma. Of course, I was the pawn, and it was normally over money. My mother always wanted money from my grandma, and if my grandma wouldn't give it to her or give her enough, then a fight would start, and she wouldn't be allowed to see me. So I would be here, there, and everywhere. One weekend at this cousin's house, the following weekend at another's. I really never knew where I was going to be, and I would be there for the entire weekend. Many times I had to hear from the adults how it wasn't their place to babysit me, and how all my mother did was run the bars. A lot more hurtful things were said, and at that age, I was helpless. I had no control over where I was. It just made me feel so uncomfortable and scared to do the wrong thing and nervous. I did have my favorite two places to go, and they never made me feel uncomfortable, and I always felt loved and definitely was fed good. Those two places were my great aunt's house and my second cousin's house. Remember, they were the two who would always find me in horrible conditions and bathe me and take me back home to Kentucky. At both of their houses, it was always a lot of kids, lots of laughs, and lots of love. Later on in life, these same cousins told me that they thought I had it made, that I was spoiled because I was the only child at home. Again, perception. Such a funny word. My mother dressed fit to kill, dripped in gold jewelry, always had a nice car, and yes, our apartments were always nice and clean. So from the outside looking in, I guess one will get that impression. But I wore hand me downs and shoes that were too small. I have bone spurs on the back of my heels to this day from that. And I was alone 90% of the time after school, and never no food in the house. The only response I had to my cousins was, if I had it so good as you have made yourself believe I did, then why is it that your mother, my great aunt, had to worry about me all of the time from the first breath I took on this earth. Neither had an answer to that. Again, perception. People see what they want to see and not what actually was. This concludes my podcast for today. Please join me next Tuesday. Until then, always remember, your journey is not over. God bless.
God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only